Good evening. I'd like to call our November the 27th, 2018 Board of Trustees meeting for the School District of Greenville County to order, and thank everyone for being with us this evening. Our first item of business is in order. It will be the prayer and pledge of allegiance. We will open with our prayer, which will be presented by Mrs. Morrison Fair, and our pledge of allegiance will be led by one of our students this evening, who will be introduced by Mrs. Goodwin Caldwell. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand?
Let us pray. Dear Lord, tonight we ask that you guide us with wisdom, bound by our common purpose, the advancement of public education. Unify this board as we promote student learning, protecting school safety, and serving as positive leaders for the community. Amen.
Please remain standing. Tonight we have a fifth grader from Grove Elementary School to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. His name is Nathan Brookie, and he is 10 years old. He will be 11 on December the 7th. Nathan is part of the debate club and the Visionary Leaders Eagles. And I asked him what was that group, and he said that it teaches them how to be men and about maturity. He and his dad like to hike, kayak, and mountain bike, and him and his dad are getting certification in diving. They're getting an open water diving pass up at Lake Jocassee. He said that he wants to do that because it'll be really cool to explore the things underneath the water. Him and his dad likes to volunteer at Grove Elementary. He volunteered for the Haunted House. His favorite subject is science, and he wants to be an engineer, and he wants to apply to Hughes Academy for their magnet program. Let's welcome Mr. Nathan Brookie from Grove Elementary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Nathan. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Our next item of business this evening is in order is the oath of office for 7 trustees that were duly elected at our recent election. This evening, we're honored to have Judge Charles Simmons here this evening to administer our oath of office. Judge Simmons has been the Master in Equity for Greenville County since 1989 and also serves by distinction of the South Carolina Supreme Court as a special circuit court judge for the 13th Judicial Circuit. Among his many achievements, he has served as judge for the 13th Circuit Adult Drug Court and has been named to the National Association of Drug Court Professionals National Hall of Fame. We want to thank Judge Simmons for being with us this evening. Your Honor, please join us.
The first board member this evening is Roy Chamley.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution according to the Constitution of this state, to exercise the duties to this office to which I have been elected, and that I will, to the best of my ability, discharge the duties thereof, to preserve and protect the Constitution of this state and of the United States. So help me God. Congratulations.
Linda Leventis Wells.
Greg? William? Campbell here? Okay, y'all.
Linda?
This is important? Okay.
Anybody else want to come stand with her?
Julie? Okay, so Katrina, you're up here. You're going to hold your Bible. And all of y'all, this is important because I have a friend that has cancer, and she was supposed to be here tonight. She had her first chemo today, and she is deathly ill. And so this is for her. And my husband is trying to get our house back in order, so this is our support system right here. So,
And what a magnificent support
yeah,
system.
thank you.
So, we ready?
Thank you, Jim.
Anybody else that needs to come up?
I don't know.
No, let's have the whole crowd stand up. So.
I thought I needed a reminder that the election is over.
Yeah. Attaboy, Chuck. I appreciate that. I'm going to remember that one.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties
to exercise the duties
of the office
of the office
to which I have been elected,
to which I have been elected,
and that I will,
and that I
to
will,
the best of my
to
ability,
the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and protect and defend
and protect
the Constitution of this state
the Constitution of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, everybody stay right here. Be able to see everybody. Everybody in? Amy? Yep. Julie? Josh? Greg? Gus?
Derek Lewis.
All right, ready to go. You know what? You did a good job right now. Let's go. All right, ready? I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties
to exercise the duties
to the office
to the office
to which I have been
to
elected,
which I have been elected,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge
and protect and defend
and protect
the Constitution of this state
the Constitution of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Roger Meek.
All right, we ready? All right, I do solemnly swear. That I am duly qualified. According to the Constitution of this state. To exercise the duties. To the office. To which I have been elected. And that I will. To the best of my ability. Discharge the duties thereof. And protect and defend. The Constitution of this state. And of the United States. So help me God. Congratulations.
Chuck Sailors.
It gets harder. I do solemnly swear. That I am duly qualified. According to the Constitution of this state. To exercise the duties. To the office. To which I have been elected. And that I will. To the best of my ability. Discharge the duties thereof. And protect and defend. The Constitution of this state. And of the United States. So help me God.
Pat Suddeth.
All right, you ready? All right. I do solemnly swear. That I am duly qualified. According to the Constitution of this state. To exercise the duties of the office. To which I have been elected. And that I will. To the best of my ability. Discharge the duties thereof. And preserve and protect. The Constitution of this state. And of the United States. So help me God. Congratulations.
Lisa Wells. Congratulations.
You're fine, honey.
All right, we ready? All right. I do solemnly swear. That I am duly qualified. According to the Constitution of this state. To discharge the duties. To the office. To which I have been elected. And that I will. To the best of my ability. Discharge the duties thereof. And preserve, protect, and defend. The Constitution of this state. And of the United States. So help me God. Congratulations.
And then she did.
All right.
Thank you, Judge.
Ladies, thank you very much, Judge. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
If I could have license to say about 3 sentences. First, thank you for what you do. It is so significant to Greenville County, to not only the present, but also to the future. And I thought, being one of the trustees, a lot like being a judge. You work as hard as you can, you study, you try to make the right decision, but no matter what, somebody's not going to be happy.
That's true.
So thank you for what you're doing. We need people like you here on the front line of education.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll indulge us for about 5 minutes, we're going to take a quick break so some of our guests can leave the room while it's an opportune time. And Mr. Chamley, you're welcome to join us today. Us now. Thank you.
Thanks, Judge.
I didn't realize Mr. Meek was having a photo op. My apologies. That's okay. No.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, guys. Our next item of business in order is the adoption of the consent calendar. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion properly made, duly seconded to approve the consent calendar as listed. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We have no visitors to speak before the board this evening, so our next item of business is the superintendent's report. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Mr. Sailors. Any report that I would give at this point, I think, would certainly be anticlimactic, having had the opportunity to see a civics lesson in action and to see the swearing in of the board members. I do want to take a couple of minutes to express my appreciation and congratulations to all those who were just reelected and to our newly elected board member. Express my appreciation to each of you, both those newly elected and those still on the board, for your willingness to serve. Your willingness to be part of a group that often is faced with difficult decisions, as the judge mentioned. Can't please everyone all the time, and you don't set out to do that nor to displease them, but to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the students throughout the district, and realizing that the decisions that you make today have a great impact on the future of Greenville, the future of our state, the future of our nation, but more importantly, they have great impact on the lives of individuals. And none of you take that responsibility lightly. I think you enjoy your service and the camaraderie among the board members, but you don't take that responsibility lightly and without giving careful thought, thorough discussion to the items that are presented to you for decisions. And we are most fortunate to have a visionary, a supportive board that sees the importance of education to the economic vitality of our community and to enriching the lives of individuals. So again, I congratulate those of you being reelected. So, Mr. Shanley, on your first election to the board, and also extend my appreciation to all of you who serve. That concludes my superintendent's report, but I do have one introduction that I would like to make, though I think she probably does not require tremendous introduction because many of you already know her. But I'm pleased to announce now publicly that Julie Jones Horton, Julie, if you'd stand, will be joining us. The appointment's effective immediately, but I think actually joining us at work the end of December, 1st of January, as the Director of Governmental Relations. I will certainly offer some additional words of recognition to Pam Mills, who is retiring from that role but could not be with us tonight. But we welcome Julie to Greenville County Schools. She has already established a great reputation for her work in governmental relations. in her current role with the City of Greenville. She has a great and wide background of experiences in government service at the local level, government service at the state level, in working with elected officials at all levels, in work and service in the private sector, and at the outset of her career at the news media. So we are most pleased to be able to introduce her tonight and to welcome her to the Greenville County Schools team, and to say, Julie, we look forward to having you here, and we know that you'll make significant contributions to the leadership of this district. Welcome and congratulations.
And while we're also making recognitions, I'd like to thank Mrs. Bush and welcome Mrs. Bush back from her recent episode with the hospital. But thank you for the flowers this evening. As always, they always add a nice touch to our meetings, so thank you.
It was very cold, and I was asked by my staff, should we do something Christmassy? And I said, let's do tropical.
I'm gonna do it at the end.
We have tropical on this
No,
very
I'm gonna be quick.
colorful night. So enjoy the tropical flowers and think summer.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next item of business in order are action items. The first is item 6.01. Get my new eyes to work. The Comprehensive Audit Financial Report, coming from Committee of the Whole, which requires no second, is to accept the fiscal year 2018 Comprehensive Financial Report as presented. Are there any questions? Mrs. Wells.
I guess we don't have the representatives here tonight from, oh, okay, good, okay. We had a little conversation or mention of the audit and the IT audit and IT exposure. So I kind of wanted to see if we could get a little bit of expanded commentary on, what the exposures are, what is the depth of that work look like with regard to IT audits and the risk exposure with that?
We have not been engaged to do that work. That's the recommendation that we make.
If you don't mind, can you come up to the microphone?
As he's making his way up there, we have under contract an external auditor conducting an audit of IT operations, and I believe that information has been or is being presented first to you, Mr. Knotts.
It will be. It's close, I'd say about 98% completed. It's close to being done, and they will also present it as a normal process as any audit is done through finance for review of the findings. They'll also take an additional step to become ISO certified as a result of this audit. Getting with Bill Brown, I imagine we'll probably take it to the board sometime within the next couple of months for presentation.
Okay. So I guess hearing from you guys just about what is, we've engaged in that, but we haven't had that yet. So just a better understanding of the risk, the exposure. What are we looking at? What do you look for?
What I am looking for, what I think the district is looking for, is to, because of the tremendous risk, all the cyber security issues going on, the district should have, and they're taking the appropriate steps by having an IT security assessment being performed, not by us, another group is doing it, and I think it's very apropos that you guys are doing this right now and giving all the stuff that's going on with the security issues and so forth with that.
Okay. Okay, but we can expect some sort of report.
I would think maybe February or no later than March. You may recall we put this out to bid maybe a couple of years ago. We had really some initial issues getting an appropriate firm to respond.
Right.
We did. They've been engaged. We've also been running it parallel. Where's Bill? Is he out there? Sometimes he sits back there and I can't see him.
I don't see him.
Parallel to getting ISO certification for our IT operations, and I believe that would make us the only school district in the state and maybe the only governmental agency in the state with ISO certification.
If
All
not,
right, Jim.
only very few, very few.
Okay. Okay. So I just look forward to hearing about that in March then. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Mr. Meek?
Thank you. Mr. Knotts, remind me and the board at the end of June what our, how much over budget, or I don't know how to word this, but we came in the positive instead of the negative.
Yes, sir. As a result of the financial activity for FY18, excuse me, we had an increase in the general fund balance of $8.9 million. This was a result of revenues coming in about 1.6% over budget, and expenditures coming in about 1.9% under budget. That's about in line with prior year's activities.
So at the end of June, what was our total fund balance?
The total general fund balance is $128.8 million.
Okay, and we're required by policy to keep how much into the general fund?
As far as the fund balance, 8.33% of the current FY19 general fund budget, and that equates to $51.7 million.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions related to the motion at hand? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item of business in order is item 6.02, physical education exemption. There is a recommended motion. Is there a maker?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I'd like to
Soto?
make a motion to approve the PE exemption for one student at Greer High School.
Second.
I have a motion properly made and duly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Our next item of business in order is under information. Item 7.01, internal auditing services update. As you know, Mr. Barber is away this evening related to a death in the family, so Lee is here this evening to represent the department. Are there any questions? Okay. Lee,
Great job, Lee.
Thanks for coming, Lee. We'll tell Rick you didn't miss a word. How's that? Next item of business in order is under our information and action for board committees. Mr. Lewis, I believe you've got an advocacy report you'd like to bring to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have two updates that we just wanted to provide to the community and to the entire board. One was a request to update the board on the Transportation Committee recommendations that came before the board. If you remember, last year the board made 9 recommendations to the General Assembly for ways to improve school bus safety and school bus transportation across the state, and we just wanted to provide an update on some of those recommendations tonight. So one was there was a huge emphasis on our part to talk about the 1995-96 buses, which, if you recall, are the buses that are most likely to have what the State Department of Ed refers to as thermal events, but we would call them catching fire. So we had a recommendation that the General Assembly override the governor's veto of those funds and allocate funds for the replacement of those buses, and also that the school district not be provided 95, 96 buses as part of its allocation. And we are excited to announce that as of today, with the addition of 21 new natural gas operated buses, that we in Greenville County have no 1995, 96 buses prone to thermal events in our fleet any longer. And so that was a huge achievement, I think, that this board should celebrate. But just as importantly, we understand from the State Department of Ed that by Christmas there will be no 1995, 96 buses on the road in any of the school districts in South Carolina, which I think is really a remarkable thing that has happened, I think, as a result of this board's advocacy, and we wanted to share those successes. Some of the other recommendations that we made have not been implemented yet, but the state superintendent of education has recommended them in this year's budget cycle. So those included a recurring replacement plan for buses in the future, including into that formula allowing for growth. One of the challenges that we were seeing was that we were replacing buses as they aged if funds were available, but we weren't accounting for districts where there was growth, and so we weren't replacing them at a rate that was equal to the number of buses that we needed. And both of those recommendations were included in the superintendent's recommendations that we believe she will include in her first budget request. A few that have not happened that we just wanted to draw to this board's attention. One was that we requested that the State Department of Ed publish the average per pupil operating cost for operating the fleet. That has not occurred. We also recommended that the State Department of Ed amend its regulations to allow for a non-CDL driver to operate a 14-passenger vehicle in the same way that a bus could be operated, which would allow us to operate smaller vehicles on rural routes, reducing our reliance on the large buses, but also helping us to address the fact that we don't have enough CDL drivers to operate the buses that we currently have. And those two recommendations have not yet occurred. But I just think, looking back to a year ago where we were, I think this board should really be proud of what we have done in terms of advocacy around a statewide issue that I think we have helped to resolve. So we just wanted to share that update with the board. As you also know, the Advocacy Committee has a separate work group this year that's working on school safety, and so I do want to ask Ms. Grayson if she could give us an update on the school safety work group as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the school safety work group has been working since about August on various things that either we're already doing in Greenville County and we think would be best practices to recommend that the state implement throughout the state, or things that we are trying to do to facilitate improving security for all of our kids. We're still in the process of holding meetings. We have to have recommendations to the Advocacy Committee by December 18th and recommendations to the board by our January 22nd board meeting. The 4 areas we've already looked at is getting an SRO in every school. We have that in Greenville County. We have a wonderful partnership with the Sheriff's Office and local law enforcement officials, but many in the state do not. And how do we pay for that? Should money be allocated to local law enforcement agencies to apply for grants to get those SROs in schools, or should we be advocating for some sort of salary sharing arrangement like we have in Greenville County? So that's one of the things that we need to solidify. And the second is mental health counselors. It's not rocket science that we need more mental health counselors in our schools. And that's, again, in Greenville County, we've got a great partnership with the Greenville Piedmont Mental Health Departments, but the fact of the matter is there's not enough people that want to do the work, and we need to get funding for those folks through the Department of Mental Health so that we can get them into the schools that need them, so that we can prevent some of this stuff from happening in the first place. The third one is more of a policy recommendation than a change in the law or a financial one, and that is to get fire and local law enforcement officers working together when we're building these buildings so that outdated fire codes don't interfere with what might be a best practice for an active shooter situation, or some of the other things that we've seen in our schools in the last 10 years that weren't there when this code was passed, the fire code was passed. For example, it's prohibited to barricade a door, but that might be the best practice depending on the situation. So basically what we're trying to do is advocate for policies and regs and laws that we did for fire 50 years ago. We hadn't had fire in schools in 50 years, but we don't have those in place for active shooter situations because we just didn't have those. And the state over the summer did pass a law requiring active shooter drills. We're already doing twice as much as the state requires. The state requires 1 active shooter drill per semester. We do 2 per semester. And we're looking at, should we codify that? Greenville has had this a wonderful emergency preparedness response system in place since 2008, but it's not well known to the public. Now, some of that we don't really want out there in the public for obvious reasons, but should we, as a public policy, provide in broad terms what counties have done, school districts have done in other states, which is, we do have plans in place, and we have extremely talented and trained law enforcement professionals working with us to do that. Which brings me to the fourth point. We have applied to SLED for a private security, to be a private security licensor so that we can license our safety specialists who we've already hired to carry concealed weapons on school property. They're retired law enforcement, and retired law enforcement has no more rights than a private citizen. So rather than trying to attack the carry and concealed weapon law and open up the floodgates for allowing anybody to bring a gun into school, we're hoping to get this licensing approval from SLED so that trained ex-military, ex-law enforcement professionals can become first responders along with the rest of our first responders. And that application we should have by the end of the year, and with any luck we'll get a little help from our contacts in law enforcement on that point. Tomorrow we're looking at the disturbing schools legislation. Recent changes to that law promulgated by the State Department actually have weakened some of them, and it was a big flap in the community after the Spring Valley incident, and we're looking at what the law says now, how it's changed, is it working, did it do what we wanted it to do, are there unintended consequences of that law, and do we need some other method to again allow school resource officers to intervene on the front end rather than wait until after a disaster happens before they're empowered to take any action. So that's tomorrow at 2:30. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grayson. And so those meetings are open to the entire board, so if you're interested in attending, please let us know. The final thing I would just say is I think that one of the great privileges of this board is its ability to think about the entire state. And so when we look at school safety or we look at bus safety, I mean, we are, I believe, we have a real opportunity to help shape not only what's happening here in Greenville County, but across the state. And just as a reminder to the board that once the school safety work wraps up, then our hope is then to next tackle teacher recruitment, retention efforts across the state, and kind of what are we doing to both ensure that we are appropriately compensating our teachers, but maybe what policy recommendations could we bring to the General Assembly to reduce some of the burdens that have been put on classrooms, perhaps unintended burdens that have been put on classrooms. So I hope that we can spend the spring and the summer really focusing on those policy-related issues as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any other committee reports? Before going to our last item on the agenda, notice there's a number of collegiate students in the room. Would you, ladies and gentlemen, hold your hands up if you're here? If you're here because a professor told you needed to be here. Okay. USC Upstate? Furman? Okay. Anybody other than Furman? How's that? Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming this evening. I hope that you were able to notice the civics lesson that our superintendent referred to earlier, and it can help you in your college experience.
Oh, one more.
Yes, ma'am.
We have 2 Boy Scouts in the back. If you would, please stand and tell us what school you're from. That's Jason McQueers.
Okay. Thank you for being with us, gentlemen. Our last item of business in order is our finance report. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Mr. Sayers. I believe Mr. Knotts has a little bit of an update on finances, I think particularly regarding revenue. Mr. Knotts?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. We have noticed that November property tax revenue is behind the same time as last year. There are correlations between when the property tax notices go out compared to actual property tax revenue. Notices went out the past couple of weeks. Last year they went out October the 20th. Last year at this time, our property tax revenue for November was $11.4 million. This year we are at $3.6 million. We don't expect this to be a long-term thing. We have noticed property tax revenue has started to pick up the past couple of days, and we expect it to continue to pick up this week. So when we present the November financial statements to the board in January, you will notice that as far as our local property tax revenue and in our graphs that we are very proud of to present. With that being said, we've also noticed in November that we have gone slightly into the board's general fund balance requirement, about $3.5 to $4 million. That's also not anything to be alarmed about. We will receive a check from the state about $21 million next Monday or Tuesday, as we do every year. I'll just let you know we have dipped into that board's fund balance a little bit. Thank you.
Are there any questions of Mr. Knotts? Before we close, I did also, Mr. Sutton.
Mr. Knox, looking at our building fund, we allocated $450,000 for portables. This year we have spent 16% of the budget. Last year we spent 42%. What are we spending for those portables? What costs are they associated with portables?
It could be a number of items. It could be repairing the portables, bringing them up to code where we have to. When we have to move the portables, that is relatively expensive. I believe it's about $12,000 to move the portables due to new regulations. So it's a combination of a number of things. And the expenses would reflect the actual need of the portables every year.
Do we have more portables or less portables?
I'm not aware of us buying any portables.
We haven't bought portables in a number of years, and in fact, we have, over the last 10 years, sold off several hundred portables. And we still have an inventory of them, but that line item that you're looking at, which will vary from year to year depending on how many we need to move around. And generally speaking, once we move them around, not only do we have to bring them up to the new code requirements, which move us from about a $3,000 expense 10 years ago to $10,000 to $15,000 now, we quite often have to re-side them, maybe re-roof them, but all that expense is related to the relocation, renovation, and placing into use portables. None of it's buying new portables.
How many portables do we have?
In inventory, we'd need to send that to you, but we probably have 150 in mothballs, so to speak, at the Grove site, and we have a few in use at various campuses throughout the district.
Are we attempting to sell them?
We've sold off the ones we feel comfortable being rid of. We keep a certain number in case we were to have an issue arise where we had to temporarily house a large number of students. For example, you may recall about 10, 11 years ago, we had a fire in a wing at Wade Hampton High School, and we had to relocate students from that wing. At that time, we relocated them to the old Wade Hampton Elementary. That might not, something like that's probably not available to us now. We don't have a building in that kind of condition. We'd need to immediately move portables in if we had some sort of catastrophic loss like that. So we really keep enough on hand to ensure that we can meet unanticipated short-term growth needs as well as any unanticipated emergency situation.
Yeah, I understand all that. I just disagree with the amount that we're spending on that particular item.
Well, it's pretty much driven by we spend what it requires us to spend based on how many we need to put into service, and ensuring that portable is at the same level of the facilities within our school, so that our students, even if they're housed in temporary classrooms, are in a classroom that is equivalent in quality to the one inside the building.
One additional, on our investments, we see here where our pool investment at an interest rate of 2.09%, there's $9,981,500. From that amount, we have received an interest of $57,784. If I look back on the math, with 2% of $9,981,000, be $57,000.
Yes, sir, what you're looking at, excuse me, is our student activity funds.
Yes, sir.
That we have invested with the state local government investment pool. That money is placed into the pool, and also we've drawn out of the pool on a monthly basis based on the needs of the school. So it's not $9.9 million invested for the entire time. That investment amount does fluctuate.
When we're giving these out to particular schools, is that all schools?
Yes, sir. This reflects all these schools and their student activity funds. The schools, per the student activity fund manual, can keep a certain amount of money in their local bank account. But once those funds reach a certain dollar value, they have to, by our policies and procedures, invest it in the state local government investment pool.
Does each school get the same amount?
They'll get a percentage of what their investment generates in investment income.
Does this include all our 103 facilities?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at the Fine Arts Center, I'm looking to career centers, I'm looking at child development centers.
If they have student activity funds, they have to follow the same guidelines.
Okay. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions? Before we do close, I would like to recognize some students at Malden High School. So thanks for coming, guys. Whatever you did to make the teacher mad, go in and apologize tomorrow, okay? That being said...
Teacher's here, too.
We're finished with our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. We're adjourned.